Hello and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host Ozan and the founder of Startups of London. Today, I'm joined by Nohelia Rambal, founder of Goodfinds.io. So Goodfind is a sustainable economy startup. It is an ethical brand directory for everything from cribs to coffins, is what it says in their description. I think it's quite funny. Hello, welcome, Nohelia.
Hi, thank you very much for having me, Ozan. Glad to be here.
So why on earth should a business care about doing good rather than making money?
Well, that's a really good question. I think it's everyone's responsibility to care about what happens after we take some actions. No one can deny now the footprint that we all have by any activity we do. And no one can deny climate change is here and it is very much happening. And we actually have very little time to fix what we haven't been fixing in the past. And I think not only businesses, but also individuals should take responsibility for their own footprint and what they cause to the environment. But it also actually sustainability goes beyond the environment. We are actually quite proud that we support brands that do environmental good, but also good to society. So that's why I think it's important. A business should choose that because it goes in pro of their own sustainability as a business. So it's actually, Harvard Business Review and many other important publications have actually found out that when your business model includes sustainability within it, you are more likely to actually have more profits. So it's not one or the other. It's actually hand in hand. Your business will have more chances to survive in the future. Your business nowadays will have more chances to be liked by new generations that really care about your footprint and about how you deal with the current issues that we have as a society and the world. So I think if you want to have a profitable business today, you need to think about sustainability. One and the other go hand in hand.
Yes, quite interesting. For some businesses, I agree with you. Indeed, being a sustainable, good business would increase profitability. But in some businesses, in some industries, some vertical niches, these two variables, profitability and doing good, might be on the opposite ends of the spectrum. And usually, I think the difficulty is when faced with this dilemma, the companies, if they're not listed as B companies, they have to opt for the money-making part rather than doing good part, which is, I think, quite difficult. So there's difficult dilemma for them. So my question, I guess, is how big overall do you think the changing demand from the consumer side play in terms of wanting companies and products to do good or demanding sustainable products?
Yeah, well, actually, I struggle to think of any industry that wouldn't benefit from being sustainable unless they are obsolete already. To be honest, without our world, we wouldn't be able to exist, let alone have a business, without a society that actually includes every part of the ethnicities and backgrounds, etc., we wouldn't have a happy society that actually is more productive. So I don't understand actually the concept of when being sustainable and doing good for the environment and society is against your business. It should go hand in hand. I think some industries have chosen not to and have chosen to ignore this. And actually, more than industries, I think some corporations and some brands have chosen to not do it. I think they are going to pay consequences in the long term. To your question about how much consumer demand has been changing, it's undeniable. Google searches for sustainable products, sustainable keywords on Google has grown hundreds of times in the last 2 years. So we know that is not yet kind of at everyone's mind, but it is going that way. Day by day, more and more people care about it.
It's incredible. Also, a quick side note for the audience, many of them entrepreneurs and founders in London, in UK, or around the world. A great way to validate user demand is to look at search engine results because they do have a direct correlation with what's going on, what's trending, and so on. So I think Nohelia's point is really important in terms of the increasing the growth and the rate of growth increasing as well in terms of the demand for good companies, I should say. So this brings me on to my perhaps the next question. How do you make sure as a brand, because consumers entrust you to validate that they're good. So how do you make sure the companies that you list are good?
Yeah, good question. So we are not kind of Goodfind, the platform that I run, doesn't try to be another certification, right? There are a million certifications out there for organic products, for cruelty-free products, for vegan products, for, big corporations that, have been certified to do good for the environment or society, etc. We are trying to just make it easier for consumers to get to them. So when we started originally, we just basically started with any brand that already had a certification. So the job was done for us. Like someone else has certified them, then let's include them in the platform. There are obviously caveats with this, right? Not all certifications are perfect, but I think it's a testimony of brands doing at least part of that job better. So nowadays, Goodfind, when a brand comes to us, they go through like just as a questionnaire where we have a system where if there is a red flag, we go back and assess with them. In the whole history, in the year plus that we have been operating, probably we have said to 3 brands, listen, I think you need to improve in these things, and let's talk when you have done some progress. So I think Goodfind's ethos, both on the consumer side and also the brand side, is that we're not looking for perfection. I don't think anything or anyone at this point can say that they are 100% footprint positive and that everything we do has a consequence. Is how we deal with that and how we actually approach these things. So for example, there are brands on our platform that might have a product that unfortunately is still packaged in plastic, but they support a very vulnerable community in the society. So we actually have them as an option in the platform because ultimately there are so many ways of doing good. And it's up to the consumer to choose, well, what do I care about the most? Do I care about, trainers that are vegan? Or do I care about trainers that give one pair to a person in need when I buy one? Those two things are completely valid as the other one. And at the end of the day, giving the choices to consumers will make more and more consumers take up on sustainable consumption. So for us, it's about brands that can show that they are doing their best and they are improving. That's our criteria, basically. They are doing good proactively and they are working on improving constantly. That's the main criteria.
I'll be honest. This was something I was quite skeptic when I browsed your website and in the beginning of this conversation. But I agree. Actually, I mean, your point of view makes sense because it is almost impossible for a third party like you to look at the business holistically and pass judgment on whether they are good or neutral or bad. When all things combined, it's perhaps an impossible calculation. Mm-hmm. So I actually agree and like this approach. You leave it up to the consumer. You just point out in which way they are trying to do good and then list them from that perspective. I'm just taking a look at your website now. It's goodfinds.io for the audience if they would like to check it out. For example, you have a quite interesting. You have a list by brand values and list by brand categories options in the main page, and the brands by values show, for example, plastic-free stuff, vegan stuff, all organic ones, LGBTQ ones, helping the homeless ones, zero waste, promoting diversity, supporting ex-offenders, etc. So the company supporting ex-offenders might not necessarily be plastic-free, etc. But I agree with the point here. Quite difficult. But still, there's a problem here, I think. And I'd like to hear what you think about this. A lot of companies have started and very clever versions of greenwashing. And 5 or 10 years ago, this wasn't a trend. So companies doing good, and it is great that it's a trend now. But perhaps for the next 5 to 10 years, this is another problem we have to solve now. Which companies are honest in the good that they're doing, right? So how do you think we can take a few steps there? How do you think we can solve that problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. Greenwashing is definitely a huge problem at the moment. I think that the bigger greenwashers, the bigger brands. So you'll see a lot of big, well-known, not sustainable fashion brands, for example, that will have a small little collection that they call green or eco, and they really fool a lot of people just by sticking a label that has a word that confuses people and think like, oh, if I buy this product, I actually am contributing in whatever way. And that actually gives you an answer to the question before about like, is consumer demand changing? Well, if it wasn't changing, these big brands wouldn't be actually bothered in labeling their products like they were, and greenwashing wouldn't actually exist. So there's definitely a big movement happening here. In terms of greenwashing and how to avoid it, it can be difficult, especially when it's a smaller brand that you trust, that because they are smaller, they should probably have started their business model in a sustainable way, and then you get the products and it's disappointing and it's not what you thought. I think there are, in my opinion, and what we suggest is always go for local, always go for smaller, more nimble brands that have actual sustainability credentials. They will shout about them. So if you are unsure, look for credentials, look for some certification of some sort, because that is also like, that's already better than not having any, right? But we also understand that there are many brands that are just starting, and many companies and businesses that are just, in their first stages, where you probably don't have the means, the time, the capacity, or the financial means to certify yourself. So what do you do then? I suppose better than something bigger. So I would rather get a candle that is not certified vegan from a local shop or somewhere online that is I don't know, you can tell the story is real and the owner and business owner is there, rather than from a big home shop that is known to have sweatshops in Asia. I don't think you will ever know 100% whether this product is different to the other, but at least you're doing your best. As a consumer, it can be quite challenging, but our suggestions is, number one, look for certifications when possible. Number two, go also for the reputation for those brands beforehand. So if you are in a big fashion shop that is known for not very good sustainable practices, and they have the one product that says they're eco or green, chances are they're actually not. And also, try it. Go for small, go for local, go for things that look more authentic and less mass produced. They are a lot better.
Yeah,
already.
good tips overall. Thank you for all of those. It's a work in progress, but we are making steps in the right direction, but it's far from a solved problem.
It is far from being solved. And actually, I was going to mention that there are new regulations coming in place from January next year.
Yeah,
that will help massively. Like, brands and businesses will be penalized for communicating the wrong amount of sustainability claims, if they are overdoing it, or actually saying things that aren't true.
That's very good news. This is for the UK, I presume, but it
is in the UK. That's correct. Yeah. So the CMA have launched this law is against greenwashing. So they are going to obviously monitor a lot more. This is probably going to start with the bigger brands that they can audit better or easier, and then obviously scale down to smaller and smaller. But everything on the web, I think, will be more scrutinized against what are your claims and what are they based on. So everyone should be a lot more careful. There's actually there will be penalties for it.
So approaching the tension between doing good or perhaps the synergy in your perspective, perhaps both, by the way, the tension between doing good and earning, making a living and growing the company financially, looking at your business as a unit of analysis, Goodfinds.io. So what is the business model here? How do you make money?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We're B2B kind of advertising platform. So our business model starts with the brands paying a fee to get it listed. And then we offer advertising opportunities when we have seasonal content or we have particular campaigns. The idea is we help brands get found by more customers, and therefore, a lot of brands would like to partner with us to do these activities, so they win new customers. We also earlier this year trialed a membership for consumers. So it's the first time that we tried a B2C business model, and the idea was simple. People will have a monthly fee in the membership that then translates into points that they can spend on sustainable products of their choice. Trial was great. We had a limited number of people and a limited number of brands that offered their products in this mini kind of membership. We're just trying to prove how much of that demand that we see in the market will actually translate into people wanting to have a budget monthly to spend on these products and discover new brands, etc. So yeah, we're still kind of wrapping up on that. The last month is this month for the current members. We're not accepting more members at the moment, and we will wrap up those conclusions. But an idea that so just to kind of, our main business model is B2B, and I think it will continue to be that way for a long time. Although we trialed that out, I think it's more clear that we don't want to become a shop. A lot of people ask me why don't you just try and just be the Amazon but for sustainable products? And to be honest, I don't like the idea of having the pressure to sell as a business model. Yeah. I think what we are battling here is overconsumption. And if I had to sell things, I'm just promoting consumption, which I think goes against the whole purpose of Goodfind. I think where we stand is you will need to buy things. You will need to replace your toothbrush. You will need to buy food. There are things that you will inevitably have to replace and consume on a regular basis. When you do that, try and find the best option. And that's what we stand for. So we want to stay in that space where we just help people find things. So if you want to look at it into an aggregator, for example, where you just find the best prices for things, that's what we're aiming to. Still very early stage for us in this sense. And in the technical side, we have a lot of things to improve in our product and website, etc. But that's where we want to go.
I see. I respect this journey immensely, by the way. There's always the reason why I chose the word tension specifically is I don't think it's an easy problem or for any company to be both profitable and do good at the same time. It's easier for some businesses. I think it's more difficult for some businesses. But in your case, that's I think you have a very consistent message, perhaps against overconsumption and so on. So, but there's still the issue of finding the right product model. And I think this is an interesting thought experiment for our founders and entrepreneurs out there. So another question perhaps related to this, what is the customer journey that you have envisioned? When do I remember Goodfind? How do I become aware of it? Who is your target persona, and how do we stay in touch? How do I keep you on the top of my mind so I keep coming back and use the website and so on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I wish I had all those answers because the business will be much bigger than it is today.
Perhaps this is a good thought exercise to chat about them.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think so ideally, people that are trying to become more sustainable, whatever stage in that journey they are, they can just find an answer on Goodfind. And that was very important when I created the brand. We tried to alienate people. Most of the sustainable platforms out there, or sustainable lifestyle platforms, you'll see there are pastel colors, very female, very soft and delicate. And we wanted to really step away from that. We wanted to be a platform that spoke to more than just the same niche. The reason for that was because the problem is of everyone and not that niche only. And so by doing that, what we're trying to do is, can anyone around that is in that journey hear about us and then use us and to replace their current kind of search engine, or to replace their current marketplace that they normally go to. So obviously, I'm talking about two very big competitors here, right?
Yeah.
If I replace Google or I replace Amazon, that's huge. So I think the bigger step for us to begin with is get our brand out there in like a massive way, because we're still in an early stage in product wise. I think we want to make sure that the experience that we give to people when we go on like en masse and invest more money on getting our brand out there is as good as we can, right? So I think there is a little bit of work on the product and the platform that needs to happen. I mean, I say little, is probably big, right? But I think that work needs to happen before we even call more people and try and get brand awareness to a new level. That needs to be the first thing. The next thing, the customer journey from then should be like, for many brands, probably similar, right? You know about the brand, you know what to use it for. And then every time you have a similar need, you kind of remember. It's just like that, like kind of awareness that gets you back to that brand name, get back to that website. Ideally, what people will do is obviously subscribe to our newsletters and follow us on social media, so we can kind of remind them of these messages, remind them of why we exist, remind them of what their path is and why they're doing this, and the actual positive impact that they have. So hopefully, I think today the users we do have that experience. They kind of tend to follow us on socials, they subscribe to emails, and then they get kind of communication from us. We'll remind them about dates, etc., and kind of inspire them to have a more ethical and sustainable lifestyle. We just want to do that at scale at some point soon.
That's fantastic. So a mistake I have made, certainly, and I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs make, is investing in a category or a market that is not growing or perhaps shrinking. Even if you perform incredibly well as a founder, do all the right things, be great at execution in a market that is not growing, there is the chance to be successful, but that chance is very slim. On the other hand, I've seen countless examples of people perhaps not executing perfectly, but they were in the right industry, right markets, right niche in a time of huge growth. And those businesses have grown in line, at least at pace, with the growth of that industry, just by being average. So, and this is perhaps unfair, but it's the reality of the entrepreneurship life that I've observed, is you have to be in a category that grows itself if you want to reach great success. And I think the good news here is not only the sustainability categories and the ecology friendly environmental categories themselves are growing, but also a market around them in terms of how do we find these more ecologically friendly products and services? How do we know that they're really good? How do I implement these habits into my life? So I think these are categories and markets that are growing as well, which is, I think, a very, very positive sign for the business that you're doing now, Goodfinds.io. Although you have a lot of challenges, this is, I think, a good place to start. So with that in mind, this is my ultimate question, perhaps. So what do you think in the next few weeks, months, and years, what is the biggest key to your growth? So what is your biggest goal to achieve right now?
Yeah, thank you. I think you're right about the industry. And I think in a way, the vision there when I started was very clear around that. And it's also a passion of mine. And that really helps. I think that also really helps. In the next weeks and months, we really need to, strategy 2022 is being built, and I think it's a lot of focus on product and how do we get the product to the next level, so then we can go into the brand awareness and the growing on that. I think there are things for us to think of in terms of, as you were asking, target audience, right? Like, I know that we made an inclusive brand, but is it good to try and speak to everyone? A lot of people will tell you no, it's not, right? In my background in marketing, I know that like we have to actually try and talk to someone in particular. And I think that is something that we have a lot of work to do on that in particular. So I think hand in hand, understanding exactly that niche that we want to touch on, where to find that people, and which product would they like. I think that's our next step. After having tried and tested a few things, we are actually at the moment trying to pivot into, okay, let's narrow this down to something that we take all of those learnings, put them in place, and then reach out to more people that we know, that already we have, that are passionate and care and like it and like the experience, etc. So yeah, we're in that moment of being a small team where we are taking all the learnings from the last year and a half and putting them in place to pivot a little bit and do it again.
Well, thank you for joining the chat today. Perhaps in a year or so, we'll have another chat as we do with some of our guests, and just take a retrospective look at what has gone on, how you've grown, what lessons you've learned, how the business has changed, how you have changed. So perhaps we'll have that opportunity as well. But for now, I wish you the best with the business.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joseph. It's been a pleasure. I wish you all the best too. And yeah, let's chat in a year.
Same. Thanks.